The sound of a silver wedding band striking the hardwood floor echoed through the dining room, and in that unforgettable instant I realized the peaceful life I believed I had built was balancing on the edge of collapse. My wife looked directly into my eyes with a calm expression that carried far more pain than anger, quietly whispered that she was choosing herself for the night, picked up her handbag, and walked out of our home without looking back. My name is Ethan Brooks, and until that evening I believed success at work automatically meant success at home because I had spent years building a respected career as a financial consultant in the busy city of Seattle. My wife, Claire Morgan, was a talented interior designer whose creative work transformed ordinary homes into beautiful spaces, and everyone around us believed we shared the perfect marriage filled with love, comfort, and stability. The truth hidden behind our polished smiles was very different because distance had quietly settled between us without either of us noticing how serious it had become. Our conversations had become shorter, our dinners had become silent, and the little moments that once connected us slowly disappeared beneath busy schedules and endless responsibilities. The disagreement that changed everything started with something so small that most couples would probably laugh it off without giving it another thought. I arrived home several hours later than expected after an important business meeting, greeted Claire with a tired smile, and immediately realized from the sadness in her eyes that I had forgotten something deeply important. She calmly asked if I remembered what made that particular day special, and as I searched my mind for an answer, the silence between us became painfully heavy. It was the anniversary of the day she had opened her first design studio, a milestone that completely transformed her career, yet I had forgotten it while remembering every appointment and deadline connected to my own profession. Claire did not raise her voice or accuse me of loving my work more than our marriage, because disappointment had replaced the energy needed for another argument. She quietly explained that I celebrated every business achievement with excitement while the moments that mattered most to her had slowly become invisible, and those words hurt more deeply than any angry accusation ever could. I apologized repeatedly and promised that work had simply overwhelmed my thoughts, but even as I spoke I realized those excuses sounded empty because they had become familiar over the past several years. Without another emotional outburst, she removed her wedding ring, placed it on the table for a brief second, then pushed it toward me before softly saying that she needed to remember who she was outside our marriage. The front door closed behind her, leaving the house wrapped in an uncomfortable silence that seemed to grow louder with every passing minute. I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the ring resting near the edge of the table, wondering how a relationship that once felt unbreakable could suddenly feel so fragile. At first I convinced myself she simply needed a long drive to clear her thoughts, because Claire had always preferred quiet reflection over emotional confrontation whenever life became overwhelming. As the hours slowly passed and every phone call went unanswered, uncertainty replaced confidence, and I began to fear that this night carried a meaning much deeper than temporary frustration. Around midnight my phone vibrated with an unexpected message from a man named Daniel Hayes, someone we occasionally met during local charity events and neighborhood gatherings. His message simply explained that Claire was safe, spending the evening with several friends at a waterfront restaurant, and that he thought I should not worry about her well-being. Reading those words gave me brief relief, yet they also created 100 new questions because Claire had clearly shared enough about our situation for someone else to contact me. I thanked Daniel for letting me know she was safe, but after sending the message, I sat alone in the darkness wondering whether my marriage had quietly reached a point where strangers understood my wife better than I did. Sleep never truly came because every sound outside made me hope Claire had returned home, only for disappointment to follow moments later when the silence continued. I replayed every conversation from the past 2 years inside my mind and slowly realized that I could remember almost every major business achievement, while struggling to remember the last time I had asked my wife how she was truly feeling. Just after sunrise, the front door finally opened, and Claire stepped inside looking emotionally exhausted rather than guilty or angry, as though she had spent the entire night searching for answers instead of running away from problems. We faced each other across the same kitchen where our argument had begun, only hours earlier, both understanding that the conversation waiting for us would decide whether our marriage had a future, or whether this chapter of our lives was quietly coming to an end. I quietly asked whether she had found the freedom she was searching for during the night, and Claire answered with complete honesty that she had not gone looking for another person because she had gone looking for herself. She explained that sitting beside friends had helped her understand how lonely she had become. Inside a marriage where we shared the same address but rarely shared our hearts. Her words settled over the room with heartbreaking clarity because she admitted that she could disappear for an entire evening and believed my daily routine would barely change. I wanted to disagree, yet every memory from the previous months reminded me that my attention had been consumed by work while the woman I loved slowly faded into the background of my life. Claire gently picked up the wedding ring from the kitchen counter and held it in her palm for several silent moments before placing it between us once again. She explained that she was not asking for a divorce that morning, but she refused to continue pretending everything was fine when both of us knew our relationship had been weakening for a very long time. That conversation became the beginning of many difficult discussions that lasted for weeks because neither of us wanted to hide behind excuses any longer. We spoke openly about neglected dreams, forgotten promises, missed celebrations, and the countless little moments that had quietly built an emotional wall between us, without either of us recognizing the damage. Claire admitted she had often smiled through disappointment because she believed supporting my career was part of being a loving partner, yet every sacrifice slowly convinced her that her own happiness mattered less. I admitted that I had mistaken financial security for emotional support, believing that providing comfort automatically proved my love even when my time and attention were almost always somewhere else. During one long evening we paused our conversation and reflected on a difficult question that neither of us had ever considered before. If someone you love quietly feels alone for years without telling you, is the greater mistake remaining silent, or failing to notice the pain standing right in front of you every single day? That question forced both of us to examine our choices with complete honesty, because blame alone could never repair what years of emotional distance had created. We realized that healthy relationships require constant care, honest communication, and a willingness to notice small changes before they become impossible to ignore. A few days later, we agreed to meet with a relationship counselor who encouraged us to listen without interrupting and speak without fear of judgment or criticism. Those sessions were not easy because every conversation uncovered emotions we had buried beneath busy schedules, professional success, and the false belief that everything would somehow improve on its own. Month after month, we slowly rebuilt the habits that had once brought us close by, sharing meals together, taking evening walks, celebrating personal victories, and making time for meaningful conversations no matter how demanding life became. Progress arrived quietly rather than dramatically, yet every honest effort reminded us that trust can return when two people truly commit to rebuilding it together. Several months later, Claire placed the wedding ring back on her finger with a peaceful smile that carried hope instead of uncertainty. The ring no longer represented a perfect marriage because it represented two imperfect people who finally understood that love survives only when both hearts remain fully present. Looking back now, I no longer remember that painful evening as the night our marriage nearly ended because I remember it as the moment we finally stopped pretending everything was fine. Sometimes the greatest turning point in a relationship is not the argument itself but the courage to face the truth hiding beneath years of silence and routine. If our experience taught me anything, it is that relationships rarely break apart because of one unforgettable mistake, since they usually weaken through countless unnoticed moments that seem harmless until they become impossible to repair. Success at work may build a comfortable life, but genuine happiness at home depends on attention, kindness, appreciation, and the daily decision to make the people you love feel valued. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.